Hot News 2020 Democrats confront how to deal with Trump CNNPolitics. Whether they like it or not, Trump's would-be challengers need two strategies as their slog to the nomination begins: one to combat their rivals for the party nomination and one to deal with the president, who is sure to insert himself into their dueling campaigns. Monday marked a rare day when the president was not the focus of press attention, one that found many of the Democratic rivals at competing events offering a glimpse of their differing strategies for taking him on. For many Democratic strategists, the worst-case scenario is that which befell Sr. Elizabeth Warren. With the campaign in its infancy, candidates are muddling through how to best take on Trump without sinking to his level of discourse, particularly at a time when he's flinging xenophobic rhetoric about his wall in a standoff over the longest government shutdown in history. Sr. Kamala Harris of Sr. Cory Booker of New. After concentrating on introducing herself to voters in her first swing through Iowa, Sr. Kirsten Gillibrand and former Housing and Urban Development Secretary Julian Castro is presenting himself as the antidote to Trump. Some in the fledgling field seem most comfortable ignoring the president as a way of avoiding his inevitable attempts to throw them off kilter and divert their efforts to keep voters focused on issues such as health care, economic disparity, and racial and gender equality that Democratic voters care about. The downside of such a strategy is that a candidate could look weak in the face of the president's bullying, raising questions about their capacity to stand up to him in a debate or the fevered final days of the 2020 race. Others are still deciding whether it's best to engage Trump, all the time, tweet for tweet, as a means of scoring political points. Anti-Trump fervor. The anti-Trump feeling seething in the Democratic grassroots will create pressure on the candidates to take on the president directly. That's one reason that Harris focuses on her toughness as a prosecutor. She underlined that the dangers of engaging Trump were exemplified by Warren's feeble attempt to table the controversy over her claim to Native American ancestry. She was clearly by producing a DNA test showing she could have as little as 1/1024 Native American blood, and distracted from her own message about the toll that economic corruption in Washington has taken on working families. Harris has critiqued Trump's language, his policies, and his role he has played in stoking racist rhetoric from the early days of his presidency, but she has often done so without mentioning his name. Her announcement video was just the latest example of that fencing technique. She did not name Trump as an implicit contrast to Trump's politics of division. She cited the aspirational message of Martin Luther King Jr. as a model Monday. And she sought to Harris said Monday that she was prepared to fight for leadership that prioritizes the needs of average people, rather than self-interest. She ultimately picked a racist. Booker, who said Monday that he's getting close to a decision on a run, explained why he had not mentioned Trump at all in his remarks at a Martin Luther King Day event in South Carolina, hinting at a possible campaign strategy. Because at the same event, Sanders, who is mulling a reprise of his 2016 Democratic campaign, took the opposite approach. Sanders is laboring to address a weakness with African American voters, who form a critical voting bloc in the party's nominating electorate. Gillibrand used her appearance at a New York Martin Luther King event to slam Trump on racial issues, possibly seeking to enhance her own credentials with African Americans. Castro is presenting himself as the anti-Trump. Donald. 2016 Republicans all failed. No one in the 2016 Republican field was ever able to work out how to deal with Trump. Those who initially tried to ignore him, such as Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio, struggled for traction. When they switched strategy and tried to beat Trump at his own game, they diminished their stature against an opponent, content to plunge ever deeper into the gutter. Trump's offensive rhetoric only helped to cement his bond with his grassroots voters who loved it when he crushed political correctness and took lumps out of establishment Washington rivals. Rubio's mockery of Trump for having small hands and his quip "you." Hillary Clinton also struggled to solve the riddle. Sometimes she an alternative Democratic strategy, promoted by former First Lady Michelle Obama, was win. That didn't work either.
Raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park,